Okay. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Fearless Now. We appreciate you tuning in, and we love giving you tidbits of topics that are interesting to both Mike and myself and to our broader audience. So, today's topic is the importance of financial literacy. And to quote someone that we just ran across in the ed tech space, they said to us, to combat financial illiteracy, education needs to start early in the classroom. And we at Fearless wholeheartedly believe that. And we actually put our money where our mouth is in teaching our beta pilot over the summer an introduction to investing and financial literacy. So Mike is actually pulling up some of the topics that we covered, which all the teens were super interested in, and we wanted to kind of of course start with some stats. One of the things that is sort of standard is kind of like, did you know 2 out of 3 families lack any type of emergency savings? 78% of adults live paycheck to paycheck, and 3 in 5 adults do not maintain a monthly budget. And so when we think about those type of stats, it really kind of compounds into, you know, our teenagers growing into adulthood and knowing that financial mistakes can be mitigated through financial education. And part of that is, the way that Mike and I grew up, getting sort of a later start in life when it came to investing and credit cards. And we'll share some of our stories from that respect. But things are changing. And currently, we know that there's 25 states that have introduced bills in 2021 legislative sessions where they want to increase the access in financial education. So I think there is a movement in that way. But again, getting that into the classroom, we want to make sure that a platform like Fearless is able to kind of speed things up as, change is exponential and so fast. Mike, over to you.
Yeah, so we're super excited about the fact that states and government are starting to change, but that will take quite a bit of time. So, in the spirit of being transparent and sharing some of our anecdotes, my family came to America in '92 from a former Soviet Union. There was no financial education in former Soviet Union. There was definitely no financial education in the high school that I attended and university. So given the fact that my parents, though they were engineers, and my mom was an engineer, my dad was a communication officer, so like very smart, very capable people, planning for the future was not part of it because communism and socialism would provide for that in Soviet Union. So one of the things that I remember very clearly, I started my first semester in college. And in the first couple of days, you see these tables with water bottles and T-shirts. If I'm not mistaken, my first credit card was Discover. And we've seen that I think in 2009 there was a new law was introduced in order to minimize how much marketing and how much of credit cards are actually given out to 18-year-olds, because we're just that age is not ready. Most of them are not ready because at home or school these topics are not educated. So that's a bit of my story, and I still very much remember talking to my friends like, why are we learning calculus, and why are we not learning about credit cards and interest rate and compound interest, or even how the mortgage works?
And that brings us to our point. There are many things that should be taught, but often aren't taught in school. And some would even argue, like Mike said, things should be taught at home, right? But oftentimes parents are not having these transparent discussions. And they're usually not taught very early either, right? So, for my personal story, by the time I was in my early 20s with my first job, I figured my paycheck was going to rent. I knew that I had to pay my utility bills, but I really wanted to shop and I loved shoes. And, I started racking up my credit card debt. And I just couldn't figure out why I was making payments like a little more than minimum. But at the time I was trying to balance, what paycheck was coming in, what I had to kind of be responsible for, make sure I had a roof over my head, but I was making more than minimum payments. And I'm like, why isn't this going down? Like it's just my debt is not going down as fast as I would like it to. No one kind of made me aware that, Dipali, it's better to just kind of keep a budget and, pay off your credit card, in its entirety. So you kind of know where your monthly budget is. And yes, if you want to splurge, you can kind of budget that over time, but you know that you can, finish off that debt in a certain amount of time. Nobody told me that in my 20s. And so by the time I was getting married, I was like, oh my God, I need to clean up all of this mess that I've made before going in and joining bank accounts with my future spouse, right? And no one ever talks about that either. So anyway, it's all really interesting, but there's a few big points that we want to talk about, and especially when we're thinking about our mission driven element, where there are kids that are coming from broken homes, or where parents are too busy to teach their kids and therefore they really rely on the school system for everything. And so we want to close this gap, that's really in our education system.
And it's not so like it's partly is there. We are mission driven. We want to improve the life for everyone, including the
Mhm,
underserved,
mhm,
where parents might be working two jobs. My
mhm,
parents were working two jobs at the same time. They were educated, but they were not
mhm,
educated on the financial aspect of how to lead life. Like I'll show you another slide from our education. So we're very fortunate that our subject matter expert is a very capable 28-year-old who's been on this path of getting educated about the personal finance. Michael Clark, he's helping us in many different ways. Um, but he's been focused on this because lucky for him, he went through that analysis early in his life. And
mhm.
now he is sharing that knowledge with our summer cohort, and this is the material that is available as part of the Fearless curriculum.
And I also want to point out that, some of this curriculum that we've built, we've even included conversation starters for parents as well, right? So what should parents and teenagers be talking about together? And what subjects should you be covering in a very transparent way, or as much as you're comfortable? So for number one, it's how to budget, right? Budgeting comes down to things living within our means, and most adults are never taught this, so that's a big part of it, for one.
So some of the topics that we cover, some of the topics that we are very happy to see that the legislature is trying to introduce around the financial education is the topic that Deepaly just mentioned, how to budget. Like, luckily there are enough websites, and like we're not going to be necessarily building our own tools, but everything from min.com, and we are
Mhm.
providing to our teenagers, and we will be providing to parents as well, links to all of the resources that we find very helpful.
Yeah. And so, curating these sort of apps and websites for teens and parents alike is something that we feel, will be a conversation starter at home. The second thing that we think about is how compound interest works. That was a big issue for me. And of all the financial concepts that should be taught in school, this one we believe would make the biggest impact on children's future. Kids need to understand how compound interest works for them and against them, right? And so when you're investing, how compounding works, when you're in debt, how compound interest works, and how do those relate, and what can you do about them in good, and what's good and what's bad.
And this is one of the slides, one of the pieces of content that we're providing around financial education to illustrate the point of the compound interest. So the story goes that a wise man was traveling the world, encounters a king, and teaches that king how to play chess. And the king is amazed at the game, and he offers that wise man any amount of money. Wise man says, "I don't need your money. I don't need your gold. I'll just take one grain of rice on the first square, And then I would like for you to double the number of grains of rice on each one, next one. And then the math gets very interesting, right? So for the first 15 steps, doesn't seem to be all that much, 32,000, right? So that's not a lot of rice. But by the time you get to 30, like there, and there are 64 squares, it gets to very large numbers. So that's obviously not exactly how the compound interest works, but it's a very good illustration. And what we will be providing is both the kids and parents these examples they can discuss and then feel it, right, through these examples of how the real life compound interest works.
Yeah. The other topics that, again, of the 4 or 5 that we focus on is how to save money. And in savings or investings, you should be paying yourself first. And it's a really simple concept when you're focusing on saving and investing with the first money you receive and then living on the rest. So, that's just, another sort of very simple but important topic for us to cover.
And there are some very good examples of janitors that had that practice, and they never made, there were a couple of those case studies that they never made more than $45,000, $46,000 a year. But by the time they retired, because they had that practice of investing at 10% of every salary, they were millionaires, right? And that's something that's why we started the presentation for our participants. How would you like to be a millionaire by the time you retire? And the steps are very straightforward if you start early enough.
Yeah. And that brings us to how to invest, right? Children should, at a minimum, understand their options for investing, right? And so for us growing up, where we sort of, or at least my experience is where I faltered, I didn't even know my options. And so, we want to have them understand and know about stocks and mutual funds and real estate before a salesman gets in there and explains these concepts to them. And very slickly, they may get into something that, they don't fully understand. So it's something really important to us that we want to be able to teach kids, and understanding the importance of diversifying your investments as well.
And while on the topic of credit cards, many people don't think about the fact that you can start building credit report or credit for your teenagers way before they start at 18. In one of our previous sessions, we spoke about that. And if you guys are interested, we'd love to have a conversation if that's something that you started on, or it's something that we can cover in more details.
Yeah, I mean, we'd love to hear from parents. Like, are you opening joint credit cards with your kids? At what age? Are you putting them as an authorized user? This is where, credit cards can be really great in terms of building, teen credit. And then, the other side is just the potential dangers of what a credit card can mean in the pocket of a teenager and beyond, right? Like, I found out in my early 20s what those potential dangers are like. So we thought it was interesting for us to kind of give you a little bit of a preview. We'd love to have this be a conversation starter. Parents, what do you think? When do you start talking to your kids about financial literacy? Do you have time to talk to them about it? Are you comfortable being transparent about it? These are questions that we want to learn from, our immediate community, because then that gives us and help and teach kids, as well as involve the parents in these transparent conversations.
So maybe I'll share a funny story, which is similar to what you shared about your credit cards. So at one point, and my wife does listen to this, so like she'll probably not be happy with this sharing, but we knew nothing about credit cards, and we decided that we're gonna start living together. And very similar to your story, she decided to save up for furniture, right? Like we were not making a lot of money. And the way she did it is that instead of paying off the credit card every month, she would put the money into the checking account. And at that time, we had no idea, it was not even a thought. The checking account gives you 0.5%, while credit card charges you 20 to 22%. So that furniture ended up costing us probably 2x, if not 3x, over the course of us finally paying off those credit cards. And that's just something that we were never educated. Like there's no
Yeah.
fault of our parents. Like they do
Yeah.
not know any better.
Yeah.
So we are looking to solve for that next generation, and obviously specifically our kids and that teenage generation.
And on that note, I actually, there's another really cool thing. Like, we're going to actually curate a list of some of these really great, like, TikTok influencers and others that talk about money in a really smart way. But I did come across someone that I related to on a scenario where, there's all these 0% loans when you go and buy a car or you buy, uh, exercise equipment. Peloton had these offers where, it's 0% financing for the first 12 months and then the interest rate kicks in. And so, leverage, using leverage, there's a lot of free money out there to take advantage of that. So, why would I pay $3,500 upfront to Peloton versus, maybe for the first 12 months, making the minimum payments and then taking that other, whatever, $3,000 and investing it and have my money work for me. And then at the 12-month period, pay it off, and I still have, the other money that I had invested in the market or whatever. So there's smart ways to do things. I didn't know that we should be doing these things, but taking advantage of leverage and other concepts like that are really, really interesting. And it's just great to know, kind of upfront. So anyway, we hope you enjoyed this quick episode on financial literacy. Please, we encourage you to have the conversation with us and with your kids, and what else you'd like for us to kind of focus on at Fearless, because this is certainly top of mind. So with that, hope you all have a fearless day.